In this lesson, we will be discussing spline points. Spline points are how you determine the driving line in Trials Evo. Every time you start a new track, it'll prompt you to place 2 spline points. Any track you create will need at least 2 spline points to mark the start and end of the driving line. Adding more spline points will allow you to create a more dynamic driving line with curves. We will begin by opening a new track and placing 2 spline points with the A button. You will notice your first 2 spline points are paired with 2 checkpoints. These are your start and finish checkpoints. Like spline points, you need at least 2 checkpoints in every track to mark your start and finish. The initial checkpoints will spawn lined up with the spline points, but they do not need to be. Your starting checkpoint, finish checkpoint, and any checkpoints in between can be placed anywhere between your first and last spline point. Next, we'll add a curve to our driving line. Select the last spline point by moving your cursor over the spline point icon and hitting the A button. Now we will copy it with the Y button. Spline points cannot be placed from the menu, only copied from your initial 2 points. One thing to keep in mind when copying spline points is that the new spline point will come after the point it was copied from as far as your driving line is concerned. You'll see if I try to place it further back, it creates a sharp turn that you will not be able to ride, and the driving line turns red to signify that there's a problem. Of course, it is possible to put one point behind another, but for now, we'll take our new spline point and place it past the last one it was copied from, and also a bit further back so that we create a curve. Before we continue, let's take a quick look at the spline point icon. There are 2 useful items on the icon. First, it tells you the distance in meters between that spline point and your starting checkpoint. This will come in really handy later when we get into creating skill games, especially ones that use distance as part of the score. The second useful item is this horizontal line that crosses the icon. This line represents the size of your curve. A shorter line is a sharper curve. The longer the line, the wider and smoother the curve. So now, let's go back to the curve we've created. I've purposely made it a little sharp so that you can see how to adjust that. First, grab the spline point icon on the curve. Once selected, the left and right triggers adjust the amount of curve. Left makes it smaller and sharper. You can see here if I hold the left trigger, the horizontal line shrinks to nothing, and the curve becomes a sharp angle, which is of course too sharp to drive, so my line turns red. Right trigger makes the curve wider, and you can see as I hold right trigger, the horizontal line grows and the curve becomes wider and smoother. One thing to note is that the more distance there is between spline points, the easier it will be to get a nice smooth curve. Finally, we'll grab our last checkpoint and copy it. Keep in mind that checkpoints can be copied from existing checkpoints or placed from the Objects menu. In any case, your first checkpoint on the driving line is always your starting line, and your last checkpoint is always your finish. So now we'll take our new checkpoint and place it near the last spline point so that we can test our curve. Hit start and select test track and give your curve a test drive.